Hey, how's it going, do-it-yourselfers? So today, as promised, and as we talked about in my previous video, I'm going to give you my top 5 picks for a sports car that you can buy for under 5,000 bucks. Now, to be clear, unlike my previous videos, we're not going to be much concerned with reliability when it comes to these sports cars, but rather how much power the engines on these cars produces and also how good the driving experience is. So with that said and out of the way, here comes number 5 on the list, which is a 2001 to 2005 Mazda Miata. These cars come with a 1.8-liter dual overhead cam, 4-cylinder engine, and a 6-speed manual or a 4-speed automatic transmission. The engines on these cars produce 140 horsepower and 119 pound-feet of torque, and they have a curb weight of 2,348 pounds. Now obviously these Mazda Miatas don't produce a whole lot of horsepower, and in fact they are going to be the slowest car on the list today. They have a 0 to 60 time of 7.7 seconds and a quarter-mile time of 15.9 seconds, which is fairly slow, to be honest. However, they are on the list because the driving experience is very good. They're really fun to drive. They're rear-wheel drive, at the same time very light, yet have good handling. So you're not going to get bored of driving these cars around that easily. At the same time, they are fairly reliable, and you are unlikely to need to spend a whole lot of money maintaining a sports car, which the same cannot be said for the rest of the cars on this list. Also, they have a 7,000 RPM red line, which is not super high, but it does give you some wiggle room if you ever want to mess with the gearing to gain some low-end torque and maybe improve your 0 to 60 time. Also, if you really want to get involved with modifying these cars, you can always put a turbo kit on them and increase the horsepower output of these engines to about 250 horsepower. Now, that's not, again, super high, but considering that these cars are really light, you can vastly improve your 0 to 60 and quarter-mile run times. Also, the 1.8-liter engine on these cars comes with a timing belt, but it's a non-interference engine, which means if you don't replace the belt or it breaks for whatever reason, your valves will not hit your pistons and you will not be out an engine. And besides that, there's no other major issues or common problems with the engine or the transmission. There's just going to be the maintenance items like valve cover gaskets, your water pumps and stuff. But there is one common issue with the manual transmissions, and that's a leaking slave or master cylinder. These cars also have weak fuel pumps. But on the bright side, the engine bay is very roomy on these cars, so your labor costs for any maintenance items are likely to be low. So yeah, if you're not looking to drag race anytime soon, yet looking for a fun sports car that's not gonna blow a hole in your pocket, a Mazda Miata is a good option. All right, so up next, coming at number 4, is a 1999 to 2004 Ford Mustang GT with a 4.6-liter single overhead cam V8 engine. You have options for a 5-speed manual or a 4-speed automatic transmissions on these cars, and the engines on these produce 260 horsepower and 302 pound-feet of torque. These vehicles have a curb weight of 3,273 pounds. So these Ford Mustang GTs have a 0 to 60 time of 5.5 seconds and a quarter-mile time of 13.9 seconds, which is obviously a vast improvement from the Mazda Miata we just talked about. They also come with a famous Ford modular engine, which is a really good engine. It's very reliable and can take a lot of abuse. As we've talked about, it's also used in the Ford Crown Victorias, the Mercury Grand Marquis, and the Ford F-150s. Now these engines have a timing chain, which unlike a timing belt, and usually speaking, does not have to be replaced at a certain interval. On the other hand, these engines are single overhead cam, but not just that, they also have 2 valves per cylinder, one for exhaust and one for intake, which is obviously somewhat restrictive. Also, as one would expect for an engine this size, the RPM red line is somewhat low at 5,800 RPMs. Yet you can still increase the gearing in the rear end to get more low-end torque. However, you got to keep in mind when you do that, your cruising speed RPMs are going to go really high, which is going to negatively affect the driving experience, in my opinion. Also, 260 horsepower and 302 pound-feet of torque is pretty decent, yet you can still greatly improve this if you're willing to do more mods to it. You can swap the cylinder heads from the single overhead cam to other cylinder heads that are dual overhead cam with 4 valves, which are used in other Ford engines that are 4.6 cylinder without a whole lot of modifying. Also, you can add a supercharger to these engines and greatly improve your horsepower and torque ratings. Now, something very important you got to keep in mind is that even without the mods at 260 horsepower and these cars being rear-wheel drive, traction and therefore safety is somewhat an issue. If you're not careful, you could easily do unwanted 180 and 360-degree turns with these cars. So if you're looking to buy a sports car for an inexperienced driver, maybe like your teenage daughter or son, I would personally advise against these cars. All right, next, coming in at number 3 is a 1998 to 2002 Chevy Camaro Z28. These cars come with the good old 5.7 liter V8 LS1 engine, and you have options for a 5-speed manual or a 4-speed automatic transmission. These big engines produce 345 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque, and these vehicles also have a curb weight of 3,241 pounds. So these Z28s have a 0 to 60 time of 5.1 second and a quarter mile time of 13.5 second. These are really powerful cars. You know, they're really fun to drive. When you press down on that gas pedal, you feel the entirety of the 345 horsepower when you get pushed back into your seat. Now, you already start off with a lot of horsepower at 345, but if you have deep enough pockets and the will to do it, you know, you can rebuild the engine, add a supercharger, get a tune, and easily push 600-700 horsepower or more. Now, again, similar to the Ford, or maybe even worse, this car being a rear-wheel drive and having so much horsepower, traction and safety might be an issue for an experienced driver. So again, keep that in mind. Again, the engines on these also come with a timing chain, which usually speaking, again, you do not have to worry about replacing. And also the RPM red line is somewhat low as one would expect at 5,500. But again, you can mess with the gearing if you like to gain even more low-end torque. But again, you're gonna rev real high at your cruising speeds. And before I forget, these LS1 motors are also used in the 1997 to 2004 Chevy Corvettes and also the 1998 to 2002 Pontiac Firebird Trans Ams. So if you can get your hands on one for less than 5,000 bucks, be my guest. All right, next, coming in at number 2 is a 2002 to 2005 Subaru Impreza WRX. These cars come with a turbocharged 2.0 liter dual overhead cam engine, and you have options for a 5-speed manual or a 4-speed automatic transmission. The engines on these cars produce 227 horsepower and 217 pound-feet of torque, and these vehicles have a curb weight of 3,140 pounds. Now, these WRXs have a 0 to 60 time of 5.6 seconds and a quarter time of 14.2 seconds. They also have a decent RPM redline at 7,000 RPMs, and being an all-wheel drive turbocharged vehicle, they're really fun to drive, especially on the back roads. You know, you can push them around the corners, they will grip the road, and the driving experience on these is pretty good. Now, if you want more horsepower out of these, it's not that hard to do. You know, you can get them tuned, increase the boost, and then with a couple of not too involved modifications, you can greatly improve your horsepower and torque outputs. However, you gotta keep in mind the 5-speed manual transmission on these is not that solid, and it might have a hard time keeping up with the extra torque. Also, another thing to keep in mind is that these 2.0 liter engines come with a timing belt and are an interference engine, which means if the belt is not replaced on time and it breaks, your valve would hit your pistons, destroy your engine, and a new engine on these costs a lot of money. And now it's time for number 1, and as probably some of you that are subscribers to my channel have guessed, the number 1 sports car that you can get for under $5,000 is a 1997 to 2002 Audi S4 Quattro. These come with a 2.7 liter bi-turbo V6 engine, and they have a 6-speed manual or a 5-speed Tiptronic automatic transmission. The engines on these cars produces 251 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque, and these vehicles have a curb weight of 3,384 pounds. Now, these Audi S4s have a 0 to 60 time of 5.4 seconds and a quarter mile time of 13.9 seconds. They also have a pretty decent RPM redline at 6,800 RPMs. So yeah, these engines being bi-turbo means that they have 2 turbos, one on each bank. But it's not just that. These engines are also dual overhead cam and have 5 valves per cylinder, 3 for intake and 2 for exhaust, which helps greatly for the breathing of the engine. Now, you pair that with a 6-speed manual transmission and with the Quattro, or in other words, the all-wheel drive setup, you are going to have a very fun yet comfortable car to drive around town in. Now, the Audi S4s are the ones that come with the 2.7 liter bi-turbo engine and the 6-speed manual transmission. However, if you look hard enough, and as some of you may know, I did, you can find an Audi A6 that comes with the 2.7 liter bi-turbo and the 6-speed manual transmission. Now, the Audi A6, which is the one I own, is, however, a bit more heavier than the Audi S4. Therefore, the 0 to 60 and the quarter mile times are just a tiny bit slower. However, I personally like the Audi A6 because it simply looks, in my opinion, a lot better than the Audi S4. Now, as far as why, in my opinion, the Audi S4 should be number one on the list, well, it's fairly simple. That's the 2.7 liter bi-turbo engine and the 6-speed manual transmission on these cars can not only easily handle the 251 horsepower that comes stock with these cars, but can handle 4 or even closer to 500 horsepower without much trouble. So in other words, the internals of the engines and the transmission on these cars are pretty solid. You don't have to touch them if you're only looking to make, let's say, 400, 450 horsepower, but rather the modifications you need to do are going to be obviously, tuning the engine. You might need a stage 3 clutch if you're going to get that high also, and you might want to upgrade the turbos, but you don't have to at least worry about the internals of the engine and the transmission. Add that to the great driving experience and all-wheel drive Audi provides, and in my opinion, it's a no-brainer. The Audi should be number one on this list. Now, something very important I gotta mention is that in the criteria which we said we are not going to be super concerned about, which was reliability, these cars fail miserably. Now, there's nothing chronic wrong with the engine or the transmission on these cars, but rather the maintenance and the upkeep can get so expensive if you're not doing the repairs or the maintenance yourself that you're not going to do it, or people that own them are not going to do them. They're going to put them off, and before you know it, things are going to break down. The engine can overheat, or the timing belt can break, valves hit the piston, destroy the engine, so on and so forth. So again, if you don't have the money or don't have the know-how to keep up with the maintenance on these cars, these may not be the car for you. So that's it, folks. However, before you go, do me a huge favor and participate in this poll that I'm going to put up here. Click on the little eye icon and give your vote on the next video you guys would like to see. And I'll promise to make that for next week. So yeah, with that said, gonna wrap this up. You can also check out these other related videos, of which there'll be links on this side and in the description box down below as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys soon.